I'm going to title this video Random Advice and Spiritual Thoughts, or some variation of those words. I have a disparate amount of ideas, random thoughts that I want to place in one video, but they don't exactly connect. So if you want a coherent story, I deeply apologize, but that's not what you're getting this time. But if you're watching, and you're probably somebody who's been watching the channel for a while, if you're new, welcome, but you've probably been watching this for a while, so you kind of know what to expect from me. At any rate, let's start with hope. I've found that we have to be very tactical with our hope. Now, if we hope for too many things, we either are or become emotionally unstable, or we are constantly disappointed. We have to plan and act enough that hope doesn't fill our entire future or horizon. We should be strategic with our hope, not hope for too much, but hope for the things that we are working to change, we are working on, but have not achieved, but that we want. Know what you want and place your hope in that. Don't place your hope all over the place. Sometimes that just means greeting a day and asking God, I ask the Divine Mother Kali, what I want for that day. Just something simple like positive interactions, or I want to feel good about this test, or I want to power through my workout, do well in my workouts, or I want to not have as many random thoughts, or thoughts that are just all over the place. Have a more focused mind. Make your prayers and make what you want for that day very small. Now, this is practice for bigger things. As you start to focus your mind on what you want every day and making it small, your hopes and what are possible become more in line as your life progresses. You start to hope for what is realistic rather than hope for something that's really big that you're probably not going to get. And that leads to a more content life. And in order to bring one's hopes into focus, bring it more in line with reality, anything that you want, you have to practice it a little bit every day. That's why it's good to ask God, whatever your form of God is, for something small every day. And if you don't get it, practice not being disappointed. Practicing not being devastated or being disappointed is great to do day by day. And if you have your shit together, if you are somebody who doesn't struggle very much, or your mind is fairly stable and you have, your future kind of planned out, your job's going okay, you're making enough money, this may not be necessary advice for you, but I'd recommend everybody to be very tactical and strategic with how you place your hopes, and practice not being disappointed when you don't get what you want, and practice asking for little things or wanting little things every day. Something small brings everything into perspective in the long term. Another random thought is, I think it was Carl Jung who said that, it might have been Freud. It's funny that I get those mixed up. They're they're pretty different. But somebody's unconscious can interact with somebody else's unconscious without that interaction passing through the conscious mind of either person. I think this is really important to understand how people react to us, how we react to people, and the nature of even little interactions during the day. Have you ever been walking down a hall and you kind of not necessarily get nervous, but you don't want somebody in front of you to feel like you're looking at them, but you also don't want to look away from them. So you just kind of like look around a little awkwardly. Maybe it's not super awkward, but it's a little bit awkwardly looking around. And then maybe when you get close enough, you say, hey, how's it going? Whatever. We do that, and people do that without it really passing through the conscious mind. That's a little example. there's bigger interactions that people have. I've seen two people buck up to each other and like almost get into a fight and then get into a fight without any decision passing through their conscious mind. Without them thinking, do I really want to get into a fight right now? Should I hit this person? Maybe it's not worth it. None of those things passing through the conscious mind, and you can see it on them. You can see it on their body language. You can see it on their faces. No conscious decision and no conscious mind was present during interaction. When this isn't every fight, but I've seen fights that this happens in where there was no conscious interaction. Or you've seen maybe two people arguing where they're arguing with each other and it's the same old argument. Whether it's two friends that they have the same argument again and again, a couple that's together or a husband and wife that's together. I'm sure you've seen this where they rehash the same argument. And if you watch them carefully, there's no conscious decision to say what they're going to say. It was a pattern that's been established previously that they're just following again. And it's almost like the unconscious mind is moving the mouth, making the body gestures, and going through the points that they've gone through again and again. That happens a lot in life too. Sometimes it's good conversations. It's not all bad. Sometimes the unconscious mind, you establish patterns with somebody. You talk about a particular thing with that person, and you just kind of go through the same kind of points that you've been through before, and it's a good feeling conversation. But it's the same thing that you've talked about with them before, and probably maybe the exact same things. I think that it's necessary to become more conscious of not just our interactions, but almost everything that we do. Too much of it is unconscious. Too much of it is out of our control when it doesn't have to be. I feel like we can gain more control over our lives and direct who we are on a more intimate level if we consciously act. And this is the thing about enlightenment and moksha, liberation, is that it's easy to think, oh, I'm God, everything's God. I'm just a part of everything else, and I'm not separate from it. It's easy to think that oneness Vedanta stuff that I do believe, by the way, but to actually act that way, to actually instill that behavior and understanding in everything that we do consciously. That's the difference between being unenlightened and enlightened, is that when you truly realize it, that truth becomes who you are and what you do. And it's almost like, and this is just my perspective as an unenlightened person, I do not claim to be enlightened, but it's almost like that these enlightened people seem crazy and don't make any sense because they're acting consciously, and most of our actions are unconscious, or are behaviors that we've established that we just don't put the effort to change. And maybe they're not bad behaviors, they don't have to be bad behaviors, but patterns that we just follow again and again and again. A certain way we hold our head, a certain way that we speak, everything. An enlightened person acts consciously, and that is very foreign to how most of us behave day in and day out. And once again, it's not all bad stuff that we do. A lot of the patterns we establish are completely fine, and there's nothing wrong with them. Some of them are not bad, not good, just patterns. But that's why there's so much in the unconscious mind that people need to do shadow work to uncover, to really understand, or to see a therapist, or really think about their lives before they understand their motivations, why they do things, and who they are. Because even if you have all your shit together, the vast majority of people, I don't think, truly know who they are, or at least sometimes think, why the hell did I do that? Or well, where did that come from? And then the thought just goes away. Even if it's not a whole bunch of terrible things in your unconscious, and there's not you don't have a huge shadow, there's plenty in there that you just don't know about yourself, or you haven't considered. That's why it's almost like our conscious mind and what we think about and what we realize we think about and what we understand about ourselves is just the very tip of that iceberg. And there's so much underneath because we're forming all these patterns unconsciously, most of them. That's why meditation the goal of meditation usually is to force all thoughts beyond. Either you're making your mind empty, or you're just focusing on your mantra, or you're just focusing on a particular image of a god, goddess, spiritual master. I kind of picture that picture of Sri Ramakrishna on that white candle in my mind's eye quite often when I'm trying to focus on emptying everything else out. And, of course, I'm saying my mantra. Of course, I'm focusing on my breathing. But the mind can do many things at once, and thoughts do come. I'm not somebody who can force all thoughts out of their head. I'm not great at that. But I think that during meditation, we become more conscious of what we think and how many thoughts we think and how quickly we think. Because since we're focusing on trying for that stuff not to be there, we become hyper aware when those thoughts are there. In a way, we start to really understand ourselves during meditation because of all the stuff that we have to try to push out to have an effective meditation. And we're more conscious during meditation, even when we're failing at it. Maybe I wouldn't say especially when we're failing at it, but when we're failing at meditation, I think that that's still beneficial because you're hyper aware of what you think and how many thoughts you have. I can feel, or I'm aware of the presence of a space between thoughts because I don't know, over time I've gained the ability through meditation to stop thoughts for periods. Just to gain that ability of having no thoughts for seconds at a time takes a lot of meditation. Let alone minutes. I don't think I've ever gone through a meditation session where minutes I was able to empty my mind or just focus on the mantra and breathing. That would be an impressive feat. At any rate, in my random video, I'm getting more random than I need to. I think we become more aware during meditation of who we are, what we think, and maybe even why we think it, if we think about thinking after meditation. And I think that most people don't plan out who they're going to be. They just become the person because of all the reactions that they have to the world. That's why if you place somebody in a completely different circumstance than you have placed them in one circumstance, somebody who's a little bit more enlightened might behave in a very similar fashion to the exact same circumstance, whereas somebody who might just naturally not be that aware of themselves will be a completely different person. Completely. It's that old nature versus nurture thing. I think that we realize who we are when we're more aware. We become aware through meditation and self-reflection, but we can truly figure out who we are and act from that center when we're more aware, if we're more aware. Sometimes it just takes mercy and grace from God in order to have a spiritual interest at all, rather than just reacting. And the soul shines through in so many different ways. And our preferences, generally how we act, it shines through, it peeks through the cloud of reactions that form who we are, usually. It peeks through in little ways. I think that I've realized a tiny bit of the nature of my soul. And it's just enough to know that there's so much more than I realize about my own soul. It's like looking through a keyhole and think about some magnificent palace, and you're on the outside, dark outside, and you're kind of looking through a keyhole, and you can kind of see like little pinpoints of the magnificence inside that palace, but it's just a little keyhole. That's how I feel about how I've sensed my soul or understand my soul. And there's trepidation once you realize how much work there is to do. It's almost overwhelming once you realize how much you have to work on yourself to become more conscious, more self-aware, and to control who you are and what happens in your life. Once you really realize, and sometimes this takes a lot of spiritual practice and a lot of reading spiritual books or psychology books at the very least, and philosophy books, to get to a point where you're just like, you fully realize, you at least kind of realize who you are psychologically. Maybe not spiritually, maybe not your soul, but psychologically and mentally. When you truly grasp, truly get a foothold in figuring out who the hell you are, you start to realize how much work there is to do to improve yourself. And it can be overwhelming. But I think once you get over that, then that's when the work can begin. That's when you can truly work on yourself. That's when you can truly figure out how to retrain yourself, retrain your mind, retrain your thinking, retrain your behavior, retrain your preferences. Choosing your likes and dislikes is a huge boon of gaining some kind of spiritual agency, is choosing your likes and dislikes rather than just being a ball of reactions. But everyone can get there. I feel like I can choose what I like or dislike, even politically, by just entertaining different thoughts without committing. And, kind of as a result, I've become a much less political person as time progresses. At any rate, I think that we have to try to understand ourselves more and who we are and why we do what we do. We have to be strategic with our hopes, and that requires practice. Becoming a conscious actor requires practice. Retraining thinking is not easy. It takes time, it takes effort, and you'll find that your mind has established patterns that almost feel like you're walking a literal sidewalk and you're just following the path when you start to truly become self-aware of your thoughts. And choosing to make a new path can feel like walking on the grass, and it can be bumpy and doesn't feel right. It feels like, why don't I just follow along this path? Like, no, choosing to make a path and choosing to kind of form that path again and again and again, a new thought, a new way of thinking, a new pattern of thinking before behavior, but then thinking leads to behavior. But forming a new path takes time, and you have to tread over the same ground again and again and again before it feels paved, which is absolutely necessary if we want to improve ourselves on a very intimate level, if we truly want to improve. And I used to be a really shitty person. And I've retrained myself a lot. And I've retrained the way I think a lot. And I realize how much work there still is to do. But to get to this point where I'm like, hey, I'm actually a pretty good person now, has taken a lot of time because I was really shitty. But there's still so much work to do. And I feel like if more people got to that point, not like I'm even that far, but if more people got to that point, God, this world would be such a better place where people want to improve. God, this place could be like heaven in decades if every single person wanted to improve. And to make that reality closer to becoming a reality, we have to do that with ourselves on an individual level. We can't try to change everybody out there. I mean, maybe this is kind of what my YouTube channel is. I try to influence people positively, but man, every single person's responsibility is to change themselves. And if everybody did that, if everybody didn't litter, if every, for instance, this is a random example, if everybody didn't litter, and, you know, one person not littering is not making a big impact. But if everybody didn't litter, it'd be a much cleaner world. Same with our own personal behavior and who we are. If everybody just truly got to a point where they realized how much they have to improve and wanted to improve, it's like not littering times 1,000. It'd be a remarkable world. But we have to do that with ourselves. That's our responsibility. And we have to try to positively impact people. I try to do that, but I don't think I do a good enough job, and I don't think I do it enough. And I don't think that I try to change myself enough. That might sound hypercritical, but I know how much work there is to do. And one little drop at a time. At any rate, this has been a video about a lot of random advice and spiritual thoughts. We'll see how I word this in the title. But yeah, I hope this has been interesting. If you watched to this point, let me know in the comments, because most people will not watch to this point. And like this video, it really helps out the channel. And feel free to share this wherever you like. At any rate, thank you very much for watching. Please try to improve yourselves. Realize who you are, try to improve. It'll help so much. Thank you very much for watching, and I hope all of you have a wonderful day.